Okay. Good evening, everyone. My apologies for being late. I am very happy to be with you all. EBMC is a place that is quite close to my heart. I used to work in Fruitvale in Oakland. Now I work in a high school in San Francisco. Still kids of color, still 90% low-income families, immigrant kids, but working in Fruitvale got me close to being at the physical space at EBMC, but now we're all in Zoom, so there you go. One of the things on the email that I got from the Alphabet Sangha was to think about, the people that guide these things about what does it mean, queering the Dharma, sexuality and intersectionality and so on. And there's many approaches then one can take this, of course. I don't know if you've read my spiritual resume. I'm not a fan of spiritual resumes because I could have written 7 books translated into 35 languages, and so what, like I could have done all sorts of interesting things, and so what? This practice of, beginner's mind, how the Zen teachers talk about, is what matters to me. And my dad just got a new house in El Salvador, and they found this old picture of me as a monk when I spent most of my 20s as a monk. So they sent me this photo. So I put it on Facebook for my friends with all these comments. And I'm like, yeah, that's part of my spiritual resume, that I was a Buddhist monk. And during that time, I was 24. A 24-year-old body is not made to be celibate. And yet there I was, cannot masturbate, cannot flirt, cannot have any sexual contact of any kind, cannot watch pornography, cannot blah, and the list goes on. So what is sexuality there when you're celibate? And there I was, 24, in a group in Thailand, and group of men who are half naked half the time because it's hot, so they don't wear the robes that we used to wear in England. And we would read all of these rules that the monks had, and I would raise my hand, and I'm like, I'm not going to be around any women, but here you all are. What am I supposed to do with these rules? And they were like, oh, okay. So I was the one always asking questions, and I'm like, well, what about trans people? There's all these questions about being with a woman, and, and many times they didn't know what to do with me. And in Thailand, there is a patriarchy that is a little disturbing to me, even though I love my teachers and I appreciate the tradition. It was very painful for me to see how nuns were treated as 5th-class citizens, just like the nuns in the Vatican and the Catholic Church. I grew up as Catholic. And so now that I've been out for so many years and reflecting on sexuality, right? I'm married, I'm in an open relationship, I practice, and I am now the age that I was. My teacher was the age, okay, so I'm 51, and my teacher was 51 when I met him. And then the other abbot, he had been a monk longer than I had been alive. So now looking at aging, that now that I know young people, I've been meditating since I was 16. So that means I've meditated over 30 years. So I've meditated longer than some people are alive. And so what? I still wake up in the morning, and I had 1 too many chocolates tonight. And maybe some other day I wake up a little bit late. It's something that will never end. No one is ever going to give you an enlightenment diploma. And the gay thing, the queer thing, the alphabet thing, we can choose to look at it from a way different lenses. The lens of gratitude, the lens of oppression, the lens of complaining. And sometimes we don't have a choice as to what we're going to be wearing. The god Brahma Sahampati speaks to the Buddha after his enlightenment statement in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And that scripture, and the Buddha says, I don't know if humans, if anybody's going to get this. I don't think I can teach this. And then he says, preach, because there are people who have little dust in their eyes. And that really struck me, like it just, I was like, oh, it's for people. And then he says, I know a lot of stuff, but it's this bunch of leaves. It says, in the forest, there's all these leaves and all these trees. That's how much I know, but you only need this. There's dukkha. It doesn't matter what your spiritual resume is. It doesn't matter how beautiful you are. It doesn't matter how rich you are. I'm not saying life is suffering, is how I hear him saying. What he's saying is dukkha is a reality. And then you go over it. It's the Four Noble Truths. In Christianity, it's called a resurrection. You go to the depth of your suffering, then you rise like a phoenix, and that's what, we wake up every day. And sexuality is a really, sex and food are two of the things that can be really tricky, because we can have shame, especially as people in the alphabet spectrum. Someone might have told us that we're not good enough, or that we're criminals, or that we're perverts, whatever, right? That's dukkha. And the cause of suffering is not desire. This is a key misunderstanding for people that only read books. The second noble truth is the attachment to wanting the present moment not to be what it is. And this is not in the head. It's once you practice, you start seeing, I have my senses, I have my life, and I have the outside world. And when these two things meet, when the desire meets all of that, there can be room for suffering. So it's the attachment, and that you will understand when you practice. And I continue to, wake up and try to figure this out. Have 10 minutes to talk. But the Buddha gives this formula, and who knows whether he said it or not. It's presented in the style of Ayurvedic medicine. There's the disease, the cause of the disease. And now let me tell you the prognosis. And he says there's an end to suffering. Nirodha, the word in Pali, is when you just feel cool. And when you think of sexuality, it can have the opposite of coolness. It can be very hot. And so food and sex, because food, you look at the food, you smell the food, you hear the crunch of the food, you taste the food, you think about the food, recipe books. Same with sex. There's all these chances where your sense doors are opening, right? And in Buddhism, the mind is a sense. Queer people shouldn't be treated like this, or I should have a boyfriend, or whatever all the shoulds are that come with sexuality. My body shouldn't look this way. That my body shouldn't look this way can be deep in some unconscious stuff that we have to unravel. And that way we go to therapy, we go to Sangha meetings, and then little by little we start working at this. But that is the Buddha's gospel. Gospel means good news. The good news is there is an end of suffering. And then he says, this is your prescription, the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Noble Eightfold Path is simply the tripod of wisdom with good conduct, with meditation, or not the word meditation, but bhavana, which in Pali is cultivating the mind. And what I've just told you, it's the first discourse of the Buddha, which had such a huge impact on me that I still call it my sort of instruction book for life. I'm deeply grateful for it. And I think what I want to say about intersectionality and all of this stuff, like I can look at myself and be like, yeah, I'm a brown person. I'm no longer young, right? I'm 51. I'm an immigrant. And I can make a list of all the things that the outside world may choose to oppress. And I can also look at the things that I can be grateful for. But it's this constant moment to moment. And if you become curious enough to continue with your practice, with your prayer, with your meditation, I'm not going to guarantee anything because your karma can ripen. As you begin to practice, it's not going to be the way that capitalism is selling meditation right now. Do this and your anxiety will go away and your brain is going to get really nice and your complexion is going to, you're going to have a whole list of all the things that meditation will get for you. Because we are in a culture that's obsessed with achievement, with youth. And so spirituality becomes one more thing that we have to do with exercise and a good diet and blah, blah, blah. And I want to encourage you, if you take this as a long road, as a gentle thing, there will be times when you have to challenge yourself and really look at the clearest mirror that you can and be like, something needs a little bit of a change. Sometimes you have to say, I need to rest. And all of that comes with the wisdom. And so this tripod of the Noble Eightfold Path, when you have right view and right understanding, you use your intellectual mind, you know, and then you have right speech and have a profession where you're not cheating people, you know, and when you're not stealing, you have the precepts, and you have right mindfulness and right concentration, so that meditating every day is not one more thing you have to do, but I'm curious. And you can become a disciple by having a discipline. And, maybe for 3 months, you can be like, every day, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes. Or for this time of period. And it has energy around it. And there's even a word in Pali for it. It's called chanda. So as queer people, there are some theories that we are reborn queer because we're more spiritually advanced. It's a nice theory. I like that. you know. Um, so it could be. I mean, think about all of the queer people that have been artists, not people that are worried about shelter or something, but it's more like, how can I make this prettier? How can I write this play? The queer women that have been warriors and in a patriarchy, they stood up. These are our ancestors who are like, I'm going to live my life. And we're fortunate enough to be in this century where, we're not being tortured. And I'm so thankful for the people that came before me, and happy for, now that I've taught in high school. I've had kids that come out as trans in such a casual way. This kid got up and he was like, my name is Gabriel, is not Fernanda. So from now on, please call me Gabriel. And they're like, okay, Gabriel. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, a lot of people had to work to get Gabriel for this moment so that his immigrant Mexican mom can be okay with Gabriel being Gabriel. And that's a blessing we have to celebrate. And with social justice and with everything and with the work, and, you know, you're going to die and the world is not going to be all socially justiced. because it goes in cycles. And every seed that we plant for the fruits that we will never taste, it's worth it. And I'm going to finish my talk by the way that I've been finishing all my talks. I have a people of color little group. And when I mean little, it's like 6 of us. We keep it really little. And just every time that you work towards your happiness, you are honoring and healing your ancestors, and you are giving inspiration to the young ones. What's the point of being a grumpy, sad old alphabet person? Those ancestors that marched, that got arrested, they were there so that we could be happy. And every time that we are happy, we are honoring them. And when a young queer person sees a queer person that is happy and living life, that young person can say, I can be like that too. And you may never know that you inspired this person. Every time that you work to your happiness, you are giving a gift to the people that love you. If you are lucky to have somebody that you love, what do you want for them? You want them to be happy. So I've said enough. And I want you to be curious, explore your sexuality in ways that could be being celibate for a week. It could be by looking if there's any shame left in there. And practice like water, not like fire. It's a long road. And I'm going to see if there's anything on chat. Hey, hi. um, yeah. It's 8:29. I'm so glad I made it. I I could have come up with an excuse. I just didn't know what day it was. I'm like zoomed out. I thought I was speaking next week. That's the reason why I'm late. So I even got an email reminding me. Didn't see the email. Whatever. Still, I'm glad I made it. Many blessings to you. Continue being fabulous and all the best. So I wish you all a good night. May the time that we have spent practicing benefit all living beings. Being here is an act of generosity as well, because we encourage each other to practice. And may everyone be at peace. So thank you for coming along.